Welcome back, everybody, to the Coptic Rites class. I hope everybody had a great week. I hope everybody is excited about the start of the Great Fast. It's a time of renewal, and it's a time of repentance, and it's a time of confession and liturgies and prayers and matanias, and a time for us all to get closer to God. Maybe during the time of the fast, we can try to do things that perhaps we don't usually do. Like, for example, if you usually don't attend Vespers on Saturday evening, maybe during the fast you attend Vespers. If you don't usually attend Midnight Praises, maybe during the fast you can attend Midnight Praises. If you don't usually pray the Agpeya, you can start praying the Agpeya during the Great Fast. Just to add maybe just even one small activity during the Great Fast and keep doing it, and it will become a habit and a good habit for you to continue with later on. Let us start with Coptic, and I know we haven't reviewed the Coptic alphabet in a while, and I know that we've had some people join the class after we covered all of the Coptic alphabet. So today, let's review the letters together as a refresher, and also to help those who may need the refresher. So I would like volunteers to go through the letters. So you can just say just the letter and the pronunciation, like alpha, A, Vita, V, like that. Okay, Jaden, can you please start?
Vita. Vowel.
Yeah, so say alpha, A, Vita, V, or B, like that. Just the name and the pronunciation.
Okay. Vita. Alf. Vowel. And then art. And then bell.
Okay. So alpha is pronounced A, Vita is pronounced V or B. Okay, thank you, Jaden. Thomas, do you want to do the next few letters?
Yes. Gamma, G, or H, or N.
NG, good.
Delta, Z, or D.
Good, thank you.
I, E, and
E.
so
E, not I. E, it's called E. Yes, E, good. And Sue?
Sue.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, Gloria, can you do the next few letters?
Zeta is Z, Eta is E, Theta is Th or T, Iota is I or Y, Kappa is K.
Good. Okay, let's see. Is Philo with you, Gloria?
Lula is L, May is M, Nay is N, Xe, X, O is an O.
Good, thank you, Philo. Okay, next.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where's the difference between the L and the D? If you go scroll back, what's the difference between Lola and Delta?
So you see at the bottom here in the delta, it has a bottom side, and the Lula does not have a bottom side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. One way you can try to remember this, if you know, like in Egypt, there's the delta, right? The delta where the two seas meet. So it's like a closed triangle. So the delta is the triangle, and then the Lula is open at the bottom. Okay, Andrew, do you want to do the next set of letters? Okay, Andrew is not available. Christina?
Okay, can you remind me which one we're okay? P, which is pronounced like regular P, and Rho, which is pronounced like R, and Sima, which is pronounced like S. Tav, which is pronounced like T. Epsilon, which is pronounced as V or a long O, or E as in hero.
Yeah, so just to review this letter, because this is a very important vowel. So epsilon will be pronounced V under two conditions. If it follows an A or an E. So if we have an A and an epsilon, it's of. If we have an E and an epsilon, it's ev. It will be pronounced O if it follows an O. So if it's after an O, it's an O. So like you annu here. So basically we have two O's here. And then anything else, it will be an E, like Kyrie here. It's not after A, E, or O, so just an E. So epsilon, if it's after an A or an E, it's a V. If it's after an O, it's an O, and anything else, it is an E. Thank you, Christina. Dr. Philippe, would you like to do the next set?
Sure. Phi is sound like a PH, like K or Chi is a K or an SH like ch, or the Arabic Kha. Like.
Yes, thank you. So yes, so key, most of the time it's going to be a K. If it's in a Greek word, it may be a sha, like sherry, so it's a sha, or it could be a cha, like Christos. Christos is actually Greek, which means Christ. Okay, thank you. The next set, let's see, Isis, would you like to try a few of the letters?
Okay. Epsi is PS, like I don't know.
Yeah, ps, ps.
That interesting letter. Okay. U is like O.
Yeah,
like an O, almost like an O.
Yes.
Shy is like SH.
Sure. Yes, good. Thank you. So Epsi, it looks like a harp, right? This is how I remember. This is how I tried to teach you to remember some of these tricks. So it looks like a harp. So who was playing the harp? David. And when he was playing the harp, he was playing the Psalms. So he was playing the Psalms. So the Psalm starts with ps, psalm, right? Like psalmos. So that's how you can remember the Epsi. Okay, and U is like an O, like O, and then shy looks like the U, but with like a tail under it. So that's the shy. Thank you. Okay, next, let's see. We have Carla. Would you like to try?
Phi.
Pronounced like?
As in fish.
Yeah, an
F
F
as
like.
in fish.
Good. And can you try the next one?
Next letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hi.
Mm-hmm.
H. As in khiyar, cucumber.
Yes, good. Thank you. Next, let's see, Demiana, would you like to try? Okay. Go ahead, Demiana.
Hori.
Which is pronounced like?
Ha.
H. Ha. Good.
H.
Next one.
Ho. O. Jinja.
Jinja. Good. Which is pronounced like?
Ja.
G or?
J. J.
G or J. Good. Thank you. The last two letters. Let's see. Mina, would you like to try the last two letters?
Yeah. Chima with the CH T pronounced T or TE.
Yeah.
Sorry, TEE.
Thank you, Mina. Yes. So again, Chima looks like, again, these are some of the tricks that you can try to remember these letters. So it looks like the front of a train, the old choo-choo train, you know, like that's the front of the train, and that's like the smoke coming out from it. So the choo-choo train, you know, goes choo-choo-choo. So the letter is pronounced ch, like the choo-choo train. T, notice the difference between this T and this T, right? This T is just the T sound, like this this word here is tift. It's just the T sound. This T, it's like two letters together. It's the T with an I on top of it. So it's two letters, so it's T-E. Like we say here, so T. We don't say sot. If it was this letter, it would be sot. But because it's the T, so it's so T, like we say, Soti emmo no nainan, save us and have mercy. So T. So that's a difference between this letter and this letter. Okay, the Tav and the T. Okay, anybody have any questions about any of the letters?
I have a question. Can I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, my question is, are these letters mixed with Greek alphabet or Roman alphabet or Latin? Which is the origin?
Yes. So we spoke actually about like the evolution of the Coptic language at the very beginning, but just very quickly, the Egyptian language went through three phases before it got to Coptic. So you had the hieroglyphic. This is what's like drawn on like the tombs and the pyramids, and then basically the shorthand of the hieroglyphic is a script called hieratic, which was shorthanding the pictures because the hieroglyphic is pictorial. So it's very difficult when you want to write like long manuscripts and things like that to keep drawing everything. So they started to shorthand it. And then from the hieratic, the next phase was called the Demotic. Demotic was a further decomposition of the hieratic. And then the Coptic came when Egypt was Hellenized, when the Greeks entered and basically occupied Egypt at the time of Alexander the Great. So they used the Greek alphabet to represent the same sounds that are in the Egyptian alphabet. So, for example, whatever the Demotic representation of the T sound was, so they looked in the Greek alphabet and they found this letter, the T letter or the Tav, and they said, okay, we will map this letter to this letter. So all of these letters from alpha all the way to U, which in Greek is omega, all of these are from the Greek alphabet. After the U, these last 7 letters, Shai, Phai, Chai, Hori, Ganga, Chima, Ti, these 7 letters, they did not have a similar letter in Greek that has the same sound. So they copied these from the Demotic script straight into the language. So the Coptic language is a combination of mostly Greek letters with the additional 7 letters at the end, which did not have a corresponding sound in the Greek alphabet.
Great. So there is no Latin in there at all, right?
There's no Latin letters, but you know, some of the letters in Latin and Greek may be close. Even
they do look similar.
Yeah, so even the names of the letters are different. Like we in Coptic we call this U. In Greek it's called omega. So some of the names may be different, and that's okay. It's a different language. They basically you know, produced a new language, but using letters that were more familiar to the rest of the world, because at that time everybody spoke Greek. Greek was the language of the educated. So when people came to Egypt and they want to conduct business, they want to do any legal documents or things like that, if they spoke in Greek or they wrote in Greek, the locals would not understand. And if the locals tried to write in Demotic, then the Greeks would not understand. So they had to come up with like a compromise where they used the Greek alphabet, but the sounds are Coptic, and so it's like the same word. Most, like for example, if we take the word payot here, so payot or yot, I-O-T, or yota, O-T, this means father. Payot means my father. So in Demotic, it would have been also payot, but written differently with different scripts. So when they produced the Coptic alphabet, they said, okay, the P sound is this letter, and the alpha sound is this letter, and the I sound is this letter. So that became payot, like that.
And just one last question. I don't want to take all the time. This is really great. Is the Demotic language considered to be ancient Egyptian or Greek?
Ancient Egyptian.
Okay.
Let me see. I have a slide here at the very beginning. I know this is going a little bit off topic here, but it's okay. Here you can see the letter Shai. Okay, in the hieroglyphic, it looked like this. It's basically a drawing. It's a pictogram. It's a picture of lotus leaves and things like that. The shorthand of it in the hieratic, they basically took the same look but shorthanded, so that it's easier to write, manuscripts and things like that. In the Demotic, they tried to simplify it even more, so it looked like that. And then in the Coptic, the Coptic would be closest to the Demotic. Phi
So
here,
okay.
the same way. Chai looks similar. Hori. So some of them may be a little bit different, like Ganga, maybe a little bit different. Even though you could look and say, okay, this is the loop that's down here, and these are the two sides that are up here. Even T here, this looks very different from the Coptic, but you can see the evolution of the letter as it went from one script to the other, and then finally into the Coptic.
That is great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Very informative.
So I would like us today also to start learning the Coptic numbers. The Coptic numbers are basically the same letters that we have in Coptic, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, like that, but we put a bar on top of it, and that makes it a number, like this. So the first letter is alpha. Alpha, we put a bar on top of it, it becomes the number 1, because it's the first letter. Vita is the second letter, we put a bar, it becomes the number 2. Gamma is the third letter, we put a bar, becomes the number 3, like that, all the way up to 10. Okay, so the names of the numbers, I would like us to learn, the names of the first 10 numbers, because we will see these over and over. So the number 1 is Uwe, the number 2 is Snav, 3 is Shumt, 4 is F2, 5 is Etu, 6 is Su'u. Remember the letter Su'u, which is the 6th letter and always has a bar on top of it. This is actually the number 6. This one is actually an implant. This is not coming from Greek, but an implant from Coptic. For some reason, and I really don't know the history behind it, why this letter specifically was inserted here to become the number 6, but this is what it is. So that's 6, Su'u. 7 is Sheshf. 8 is Shmin. 9 is Psit.
I think number 6 doesn't have a bar on top of it.
If it's written in capital, it doesn't have a bar, but if it's written in small, all the numbers would have a bar. So sometimes, yes. Sometimes, like for example, in the Saturday Psali, we say Su'in Hidre Emmu'u. So you see the su without the bar because it's capital, because it's the first letter. But if it's not the first letter and it's not capital, it would have a bar on top of it. Number 9, seat, and number 10 is meat. Some of these, like I said, you may already have heard these names, like away. I'm sure you heard this. Nav, you've heard shumt. Like we say, for example, in the doxology of the archangels, we say what? Michael Papi Owit. Michael is the first. Gabriel Papi Mah is Nav, is the second. Raphael Papi Mashumt is the third. If two, we hear if two Unzu'un and Asumatos, the 4 incorporeal creatures. Shashf, for example, number 7. Shashf and Archieangelos, 7 archangels. So that's why I would like us to know the names of the first 10 numbers. I'll read them again. Away, Isnav, Shumt, Iftu, Etyu, Su'u, Shashf, Shmin, Seat, Meat. It's easier to remember them if we do them in twos. So we say Away, Isnav, Shumt, Iftu, Etyu, Su, Shashf, Shmin, Seat, Meat. I'll say them one more time, and then I would like some volunteers to say the names. Away is Nav, Shumt, Iftu, Etyu, Su, Shashf, Shmin, Seat, Meat. Okay, let's get some volunteers to say these numbers. Or I will pick people if nobody volunteers. Okay,
I'll
Sue,
say the first two.
go ahead.
Why is snuff?
Good, good. Somebody wants to do the next two? Gloria?
Shumt F2.
Good. Philo, since he's there.
Etyu Su'u.
Good. Christopher?
It's Noah.
Oh, hi, Noah.
Shosh and Shmin.
Good. Shesh, Shmin. And glad to have you back with us, Noah. I know you've been like gone for a little bit, so happy to.
My mom forgot.
Okay. Justin?
Seat meat.
Good, good, good. Can I have a volunteer to say all of them? Or at least half of them? Okay. Thomas. Thomas?
Oh, I was muted, sorry. Away
Away.
away is snuff.
Continue.
Shum. What's that first letter?
This is the F. F2. F2. Your sound is very low, Thomas. Are you still there? Somebody else want to continue? Malak, would you like to continue?
Can I start from the beginning?
Sure.
Okay. Away, snuff, shumt, F2, A2O,
It's you.
Etyu, so, shash, shmin, psit, meat.
Thank you. Very good. Okay. Gloria, you want to try saying all of them?
Away Isnav Shumt F2 Etyu Su'u Shash Ishmin Sheet Meat.
Very good. Let's see who hasn't said anything. Let me pick on people who are hiding. Heidi?
Okay. Away, snav, shomt, iftu, ityu, sou, shash, ishmin, ipsit, meet.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Siham? Madam Siham?
Yes. Owi is not
Away.
away is not shmot
Shomt.
shomt if to
Yes.
it away
Etyu.
it you su
Mhm.
shash
Guys, blame me.
Ishmin, yes.
is
Psit.
ipsit meat
Meat. Good,
Meat.
good. Thank you. Let's take one more. Madam Nadia? Okay.
Muted. 1 second.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
forgive me. I had it on mute. Away, snot,
Snav.
sorry, shumt, etov, etfo,
F2.
f2,
Mhm.
etu,
Etyu.
etu, su,
Su or Su, yeah.
shashv, shmin,
Good.
sit, and meet.
Good. You guys are excellent. I'm very happy to see people reading like that. So I will say it one time, the whole thing. So we have Uwai Snav, Shum Tiftu, Etyu Su'u, Shash Fishmin, Seat Me. Now this is 1 to 10. How do we say 11, 12, 13 like that? It will be a combination between 10 and the number. Like for example, 11 would be 10 and 1. So we say what? Meet away. 12 will be meet snav. 13 will be meet shomt. 14 will be meet f2, like that. Okay, so this is how we write the combinations. It's meet and then the number. The same thing when we learn next week, we'll learn the multiples of tens. We'll learn 20, 30, 40. It's the same thing. Like if you want to say, for example, 20 is gut. So you want to say 24, like we say the 24 priests. So we say gut if 2. Gut is 20, and if 2 is 4, so 24. Similar to Arabic, right? So in Arabic, we say what? Arba wa ashrin, 4 and 20. And actually in Old English, this is how they used to say it. So they wouldn't say 25, they would say 5 and 20, or 4 and 20. If you look like in Old English, like if you read, for example, Shakespeare, you'll find that this is how they would say the numbers. So this is kind of the way that the languages were at that time. So let's have a couple of people volunteer to say some combinations. So raise your hand. Who can say, for example, 17? Somebody say 17. Justin? Or, yeah.
Meet it soft.
Shash, good. Meet Shash, very good. Okay, somebody say 19. Who can say 19? Let's see. Christopher?
Meets it. Do you want to say it? Okay, 19.
Yes.
That's
So it'll
only
be 10 and 9.
Okay, so meet, Ipsit.
Good. Okay, let's see, Jaden. Jaden say 12.
meet in
What's 2?
in
Esnav.
meet the snob.
Good. Like we say, the 12 apostles, right? Meet Esnav and Apostolos. 12. Okay, very good. So now we learned the numbers, all the ones, like the single digits from 1 to 10.
What is the number associated to 0?
We'll learn that next week. There's actually, this is interesting because up until I think the 3rd century, there was no 0. And actually in the Roman language, in the Roman numerals, 0 was not even available until the Arabs. So the Arabic numerals are the first numeric system that had 0. So I always joke and I say the only thing we ever got from the Arabs is the concept of nothing.
So true.
So let us now switch over to the rites. Just a reminder, last week we had started talking about the liturgy of the readings, and we talked about the Pauline Epistle and the raising of incense of the Pauline Epistle. We talked about the censer and how, you know, all the symbolisms of the censer, how the the censer represents God, the Trinity, the unity, heaven, how it represents the womb of Saint Mary, and we talked at length about the coal and the fire, that the coal represents the human nature of Christ, and the fire represents the divine nature of Christ, and together they give us the idea of the united 2 natures, that we said it's 1 nature out of 2. This is the word homoousios. Homoousios. This is the word that this word was the cause for the split of the churches in the 4th Ecumenical Council. The Chalcedonian churches wanted to use the word homoousios. It's actually 1 letter that's different between what the non-Chaldean churches, which include the Church of Alexandria, and the Chaldean churches. It's 1 letter difference. So we say homoousios, 1 nature out of 2. They say homoousios, which is I think 2 natures. I don't remember the exact translation of homoousios, but the difference, as I said, is 1 letter, O or iota. So we talked about the procession of the incense, and we talked about that the Pauline is read from one of the 14 epistles of St. Paul. And during the procession of incense, the priest goes throughout the whole church, just like St. Paul journeyed preaching the gospel to all nations. As we know, most of the apostles, they preached in Jerusalem and Judea, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Because all of them were sent to preach to the Jews. Even when they preached outside of Jerusalem and Judea, they were targeting the Jews. But St. Paul, his ministry was targeting the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles? The Gentiles are the non-Jews. So anybody who's not a Jew is a Gentile. So we, as Egyptians, we are not Jews, we are Gentiles. So this was the ministry of St. Paul. So he went throughout the whole world to preach. And so this is why the procession of the Pauline incense is throughout the whole church. And then it's from the left side to the right side, which is the north, from the north to the south. Why from the left side to the right side? Because through the ministry of St. Paul, we, the Gentiles who were rejected, who were far away from God, because remember, the Jews were God's chosen people. So anybody who's not a Jew is a Gentile, so he's not among the chosen, right? So we were the non-chosen, or the rejected, or the far away. So we were on the left side. So St. Paul, through his ministry, he brought us from the left side to the right side, or from darkness to light, or from being rejected or being far away to being accepted or being close to God. Okay, so this is the procession of the Pauline epistle. It's throughout the whole church, and it's from the left to the right.
I have a question here.
Sure.
I have been told that this done in the counterclockwise direction, because it is something we do against the world.
Yes. So all of the movements inside the church is always in the counterclockwise, with the exception of very few things. And exactly like you said, we spoke about this also in the raising of incense quite a bit. Because everything, the world moves with the clock. It moves with time. In the church, we are against the time, so we are counterclockwise. So we go against the time. That's why inside the altar, like all the processions are always counterclockwise. In the church, all the processions are always counterclockwise. So this is true, but in the case of the Pauline incense, added to that is the idea of going from the left to the right, because when we look at the procession of the Praxis is actually the other way around, and we'll talk about why that is in a few minutes. So here's Abuna. He's putting incense into the censer, and then he goes around the altar, and he goes 3 times. This is exactly the same as the procession of incense that we talked about in the raising of incense. The exact same rite, the exact same everything. 3 times inside the altar, and he says the 3 litanies. The deacon responds to him. Then he goes outside, goes around the church, comes back, and does one more procession around the altar. Exactly the same. If you missed that, you can review the recording of the raising of incense, and we explained all of that in it. As I mentioned also before, the recordings are all on YouTube. They're also on Facebook. So there's a Facebook page for the Coptic Rites class, and also on my YouTube channel. So either search for me, Gergis Gat, or just search for Coptic Rites class, and you'll find there's what do you call it? A list. And it has all the lectures in order. So if you missed any of them, you can go back and review them. I can put the link also in the chat window in a few minutes, in case you don't have it. It's also in the email that I sent. So at the bottom of the email, you have the link to the YouTube channel. Saying this, if you do not receive the emails, please send me your email so I can put you on the email list so you get the reminders. I send a reminder every week, 1 hour before the class starts, so that people don't forget. So like Noah was saying, his mom forgot. So now if she gets the email, she won't forget. Okay, so here's Sayyidina, the Pope. He's going around raising the Pauline incense throughout the church, as we explained. So we said that the Pauline epistle is read from the 14 epistles of St. Paul. So we need to look at the books of the New Testament and see where everything is coming from. So we said the Pauline epistle is from 14 epistles. It's from 14 books or 14 epistles. So these books are all the letters of St. Paul. Romans, that's the first one. 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And then we have, these are all the, what are called the pastoral books or pastoral letters. That means they were written to churches, okay? Then we have like personal letters. So 1st and 2nd Timothy. So Timothy was one of the disciples of St. Paul. He was a very, very close disciple of St. Paul. So he wrote him 2 epistles, 1st and 2nd Timothy. 2nd Timothy is the very last epistle that St. Paul wrote, and he wrote it in prison while he is waiting to be executed. And that's why at the end of the epistle, he says, "What I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and finally there's laid up for me the crown of victory." So this is the very last epistle that he wrote, was 2nd Timothy. The epistle to Titus was also one of his disciples. The epistle to Philemon, this is it's also a personal epistle. In the letter to Philemon, Philemon was one of the believers who was baptized at the hands of St. Paul, and he had a slave. The name of his slave was Onesimus, and the slave ran away. But then he went to St. Paul and he believed and he was baptized. And so St. Paul sent Onesimus back to Philemon with this letter, and basically telling him, please forgive him, please accept him back. And, I urge you to accept him as a brother because he's been baptized, but he does not tell him, you should not, you should free him or keep him as a slave or anything. He leaves that up to Philemon, but he does say, it would be good if you sent him back to me because he's useful for me in the ministry, so he can come back and serve me. But look at how St. Paul is very delicate. He handles the situation very delicately. He sends the runaway slave back to his master with a letter that tells him, please forgive him. And if you find it in your heart, send him back to me so that he can help me in the service. And then the epistle to the Hebrews is written to, who are the Hebrews? The Hebrews are the Jews. So this is like a universal epistle. So all of these were written to churches. Romans is also a universal, but to the Romans. But all of these, so this is the church that's in Corinth. Galatia is like a region, like a state. Ephesians, this is the city of Ephesus. This is the city of Philippi. This is the city of Colossae. This is the city of Thessalonica. So all of these are written to specific churches. These are written to individuals. Hebrews and Romans are written to like races. The Hebrew race, the Jewish race. So all the Jews. The Romans here could be taken to all the Romans, but also specifically to the city of Rome, the believers who believed in the city of Rome. So these are the 14 epistles of St. Paul.
Can I ask a question here, Gergis, one more? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I asked that to Abuna Yunan and I didn't get an answer. Are these all book and letters ordered in the New Testament based on when they are written or based on importance?
No, they are not. They are not based on when they were written, because, as I said, 2nd Timothy was the very last epistle that he wrote.
Okay.
So if they were ordered chronologically, so this should be the last one. And I believe Hebrews may be one of the earlier ones that he wrote. So they are. This is a good question. Yeah, and how are they arranged?
Yes.
Some scholars would say they are arranged according to importance. This is probably the most, or some scholars also say that they may be arranged by length, because Romans is longer than some of the other ones. So we can look at that. Maybe I can look at it and give you a more a better answer next time.
I have a quick question.
Even the Old Testament is also not arranged chronologically, because the Old Testament, the first book is Genesis, right? Genesis was written by Moses, but actually the first historical book is the book of Job, because Job was in the time of Isaac, Abraham and Isaac, so he was before Moses. Again, in the Old Testament, they're written. There's actually a very specific way of organizing the Old Testament books, and this we can talk about another time, because you have the prophetic books first, then you have the historical books first, then you have the poetic books, then you have the prophetic books, and even those have an arrangement, and it's 512, 512. So there's 5 historical books of Moses, then there's 12 other historical books, then you have 5 poetic books, and then you have 5 major prophets and 12 minor prophets. So there is an arrangement, and even this arrangement is different from the Septuagint. The Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament. I'm getting off topic here, so we can have a more better discussion about the books of the Bible another time, and it'll be a little bit better organized. Somebody else had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. What is Pauline epistle in Arabic?
البولس.
Bulus. Okay,
البولس,
sure.
yes, sure. So these are the Pauline epistles. Then the Catholic epistles are 7. Catholic is Catholicon. The word Catholic does not mean, most people may think like Catholic, the Catholic Church, like the Roman Catholic Church. The word Catholic or Catholicon means universal. That's why we call it the Catholic epistles. Universal means that these books were not written to specific people, but they were written to the church in general. Some of them may have been targeted, like the epistles of St. John. For example, he writes to the elect lady. So it's targeted to, it looks like a specific person, but even the elect lady here, many of the scholars say the elect lady is the church itself. So different from the Pauline epistles, which were targeted to specific people, these were targeted to the church in general, the universal church. By the way, the disciples of the Lord, if we look at them in light of like the organization of the church, like today we have priests and we have bishops and we have patriarchs, right? We can say that the disciples were all universal bishops or universal patriarchs. In other words, today we have the Patriarch of Alexandria, we have the Patriarch of Rome, we have the Patriarch of Ethiopia, for example, right? But we cannot say, for example, that Saint Peter was the Patriarch of a specific city. No, Saint Peter was a Catholic or a universal patriarch or bishop. Because he preached in many places and he went to many places. So that's why these letters are universal letters. They are not, specific to a specific church or a specific region. So these epistles are, the first one is James, the Epistle of St. James. If you haven't read the Epistle of St. James, I encourage you to read it. It's a very beautiful epistle. It's only 5 chapters, I believe. It's not long, but it's very, very nice. Then you have the 2 epistles of St. Peter, 1 Peter and 2 Peter. These are a little bit more difficult to read. So if you're new to reading the epistles, I would advise reading James first, and then I would advise reading the epistles of St. John. St. Jude is very small, and then you can come back and read St. Peter because it's a little bit more difficult to understand. So St. John wrote 3 epistles, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then Jude here, who's this Jude? Is this Judas Iscariot, do you think? No.
Yeah. No, it's Jesus' brother.
Yes, yes. So there was another disciple, his name was Jude, and he was basically the cousin of Jesus, or they call him the brother of Jesus. So he wrote this epistle. It's a very short epistle. It's a very nice epistle. Judas Iscariot did not write anything, and even if he wrote, we would not put it in the Bible, right? So these are the 7 epistles, the Catholic epistles. So James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and the epistle of St. Jude. Then we have the Praxis. The Praxis is the Acts of the Apostles. This book here, the book of Acts. This is the Praxis. And then we have the Gospels. How many Gospels do we have?
4.
4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, these are the Gospels. So we see that in the church and the liturgies, we read from all of these books except which book?
Book of Revelation.
Revelation.
The book of Revelation. When do we read the book of Revelation? Shatter by Ul.
Lilith Abu Ghalamsi.
Yes, and the vigil of Apocalypse, Abu Ghalamsis, which is the night of Good Friday. After we go home and rest a little bit, we come back to the church, and then we spend the whole night in very beautiful praises and readings and very beautiful rites, and we read the entire book of Revelation during this night. We'll talk about Abu Ghalamsis another time and go into more details. But so you see, in the church, if you attend the church regularly and attend all the liturgies, you would probably read or hear all of the readings of all of the New Testament. And if you attend the Abu Ghalamsis, you'd also hear the Revelations. Okay, so the second reading, so we have 3 readings. Actually, we have 5 readings. We have the Pauline, the Bolin, we have the Catholicon, which is from the Catholic Epistles, the 7 epistles, and then we have the Praxis, which is from the Book of Acts, and then we have a Psalm and a Gospel. So we have 5 readings in every liturgy. So the second one is the Catholicon, and this is from, as we said, one of the 7 general epistles. In this reading, Abuna does not do a procession. There's no procession for the Catholicon. Okay, so in the Pauline, we said there's a procession, and in the Acts, there's a procession, but it's a little bit different. In the Catholicon, there's no procession. It's the only reading that doesn't have a procession. And the priest stays inside the sanctuary. He remains in the sanctuary. Why? Nothing in the church is just done like that. You know, there's always a reason for everything. The Catholicon is the readings from the disciples. And what did the Lord tell them before he ascended to heaven? He said, "Behold, I send the promise of my Father upon you, but tarry," that means remain or wait, "in the city of Jerusalem until you are endowed with power from on high." So in the Catholic reading, in the Catholicon, the priest does not leave the sanctuary to remind us of the disciples who were waiting in Jerusalem, because the sanctuary represents Jerusalem, who were waiting in Jerusalem until they received the Holy Spirit. And then the third reading is the Praxis. The Praxis. The word Praxis is a Greek word which means stories. Prisas, stories. Praxis. So it's taken from the book of the stories of the apostles, or the Acts of the Apostles. So the reader reads from the book of the Acts, and then there's a procession during this reading. The priest puts only 1 handful of incense in the censer. In the Pauline and all the other ones, he puts 5. So that's why I said this is different. And then he does 3 circuits in the sanctuary, like he does in all the other ones. And then he goes to the church, and this time he starts from the south side to the north side. This is different, because in the Pauline, he went from the left to the right, or from the north to the south. In the Praxis, he goes the opposite, from the south to the north. And he only goes through the second chorus, which means the first chorus is the sanctuary and the deacon's chorus. The second chorus ends, before the back of the church. Maybe in practice, most priests will go to the back because it's difficult to just cut through, half of the church. But in the correct rite, they only go through the second chorus. They don't go through the whole church. Why? Why is that? There's, again, nothing in the church is just without reason. First of all, the procession is not in the whole church, because as I already mentioned, the service of the disciples was mainly in Jerusalem and Judea, mainly. Yes, most of them went outside, but that was later. But their main ministry was in Jerusalem and Judea. And actually, that's what the Lord told him when he was ascended. He said, preach in Jerusalem, and he gave them a specific order. First Jerusalem, then Judea, then Samaria, then the end of the to the end of the world. So Jerusalem, this is where Christ was. This is where he began his preaching. This is the city of the king. Judea is the larger area, okay, like the state. Like if we say Jerusalem is like Houston, so Judea is like Texas. Okay, so go outside of the hub and preach outside, but only to the Jews. Okay, Samaria is the enemy. If you remember, you know, the Samaritan woman, what did she tell the Lord? She said that the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. How can you speak to me, right? This is because there's enmity between the Jews and the Samaritans, and I talked about that when we talked about the history of the Old Testament, if you remember. From the very, very old time, there's always been enmity between the Jews and the Samaritans, which is the Samaritans was the northern kingdom and the Judea was the southern kingdom, and they were always at war with each other. So before you go and preach to the people that already rejected us, preach to the people that should be accepting us. This is why Judea first and then Samaria. And then when you can do all of that, then you can go to the rest of the world. So again, the ministry of the disciple was mainly in Jerusalem and Judea, and that's why the procession is mainly in the sanctuary and up to the second course of the church. Why is it right to left? So in the procession of the Pauline, we said it was left to right because St. Paul brought the Gentiles from like far away into being close to God. Here, the right and the left represents the Jews and the Gentiles, Bardo. So the Jews were the accepted people again, right? So the disciples started to preach first to the Jews. This is on the right side. Some of the Jews accepted, but many rejected. When the Jews rejected, then the apostles went to the left side, which is the Gentiles. Is this clear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, in the Pauline epistle, in the procession, when Abuna finishes the procession in the church, he goes back into the altar and he does one more circuit, like I said. In the circuit of the praxis, he doesn't do that. He stops at the gate of the sanctuary. Sometimes you see some priests, they hang the censer. There's like a hook, and they hang it at the gate of the sanctuary. If they don't do that, then they stand at the gate and then they give the censer to the deacon to take it. This is not because Abuna is too tired, so he doesn't want to go and take the censer inside. No, there's a rite there. What is the rite? The apostles, after they all left Jerusalem and they preached outside of Jerusalem, all of them were martyred outside of Jerusalem. None of them came back to Jerusalem. So this is why he does not enter back with the censer inside the altar, but he remains, or he leaves it at the gate of the altar. Is this clear?
Mm-hmm.
A question, Malam Girgis, if I can ask one.
Sure.
Yeah, is that a new thing, the hanging of the Sharia at the front of the altar? Because as long as I can remember, I never ever witnessed that ritual being done. I feel like it's something recently that's been revived. I wanted to see kind of your thoughts on that. Is that something fairly new?
Yeah, so when we were growing up, this was not a rite that we really saw. Especially in our diocese here, we see this more often than maybe if we prayed in some of the other churches elsewhere. But I don't know. I don't think it's something new, like somebody invented it, because I know like Amba Yusuf would not do anything like that. But my feeling is it's something that was lost throughout time, and it's being revived. And it's because of this, because of the understanding that we should not enter with the censer back into the altar, so it should remain. So where are you going to put it? You can't put it like anywhere, like in the deacon's course. It doesn't make any sense. There is no meaning to that. So they hang it at the gate of the sanctuary. And Sayyidina is typically adamant about that, and you know, he tries to make sure that that gets done. I believe, yeah, it's not something that's like invented, but it's something that is being revived, that was lost throughout the ages. The thing,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gergis, but absolutely, I have witnesses for many, many years. When I used to live in Atlanta, Georgia, Father Luke, God rest his soul, he has, you know, he went to be with the Lord recently. He was doing this all the time. So it's not something, you know, I have seen it.
One thing about the rites, and this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this class. There's many rites in the church, and some of them are understood, but many of them are not understood. And when you don't understand something, over time it falls. Like this, you know, if we don't understand why we leave the censer outside, out of practicality, so the easiest thing is to bring it back inside. That's where the censer usually is. But if we understand the rites, then number one, when we attend the prayer, we have understanding. We see things and we know why they're being done. Number two, if the rites are not understood, then you have some people, they start making up things. And I've seen things like that. And I've seen things that are written even in books that are completely incorrect. Like one that I read one time and I started laughing. Somebody wrote, he was trying to explain, you know, some of the rites in the liturgy. And then he said, then after the litanies, the priest prays the commemoration of the saints. And this is a long prayer in which you remember the saints. And this is the time to sit down. It actually was written in the book like this. This is the time to sit down. And I started to laugh and I said, okay, next time Abuna prays it, I'll give him a chair because he needs to sit down. And all of us are sitting down. So when people don't understand, they just make things up. And then the result of that is when somebody looks at something like this and he says, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense. So then this means that all the rites don't make any sense. And then the rites start to lose their value. But if we understand the rites and we understand why we do the things that we do, and sometimes we may not understand. There are some rites that we do them, and the reason for them has been lost over the years. We can try to contemplate and say, we think maybe this is why it was. But instead of trying to make something up and making people be confused or not very happy because it doesn't make any sense, it's okay to say we don't understand, you know. So I hope that helps answer that question. There are some rites that may have been lost throughout the ages, and we try to revive those rites with the understanding of why we are doing those rites. We're actually like 5 minutes over, but I just want to cover one more slide because it's in the game that we're gonna play. So the last, or there's one more reading, but this is not from the Bible, which is the Synaxarium. The Synaxarium is the biographies of the saints. Okay. So every single day in the Coptic calendar, there is a reading from the Synaxarium, which means that every single day there is a commemoration for one of the saints who was martyred or who departed, or there's a commemoration of a church that was being built or something like that. There's an occasion for every single day. And this is read after the Acts. Why after the Acts? Again, we don't do anything just because, because this is a continuation of the history of the church. The book of Acts is the only historical book in the New Testament. It's the history of the church, the history of the beginning of the church. The book of Synaxarium is the continuation. So what happened to St. Peter? What happened to St. Paul? What happened to St. Timothy, his disciple? What happened to St. Clement of Rome, the disciple of St. Peter? And then their disciples and their disciples and their disciples. What happened to our fathers, the monks, like St. Anthony, like St. Paul, like St. Macarius? What happened to the martyrs, like St. Damiana, like St. George, like St. Abu Sifin? This is where we learn all of this. It's a continuation of the history of the church. And it's important for us to listen when we hear the Synaxarium, because this is how we're going to learn the stories of the saints. During the Holy 50 days, which is the period after the resurrection, we do not read the Synaxarium. Why we do not read the Synaxarium? Because during the Holy 50 days, we are focused on the resurrection. And so the resurrection is the biggest feast. So all of the other feasts are minor to it. So we are not going to take our focus off of the resurrection and celebrate, for example, like the Feast of St. George always falls during the Holy 50 days. It's always May 1st. And of course, I know this because my name is George, right? And then the week after is the Feast of St. Mark, May 8th. They always fall during the Holy 50 days. It doesn't mean that we don't celebrate them. Of course, we celebrate them. But we are focused on the resurrection. And as we are happy and joyful about the resurrection, we are also happy and joyful for the Feast of St. George and the Feast of St. Mark, like that. Usually the Synaxarium is read by the priest. Why? Because, again, it's a continuation of the history. This is one thing, and the priest is part of that history. Also because, the Synaxarium, for a period of time, and even until today, there are things written in it that need to be reviewed. And so if the priest is reading it and he comes upon something that doesn't sound right, he could fix it. And sometimes you may find the Buna doing that. Or maybe he would explain something that is not clear, a word in there that's not clear, and he may take a moment to explain that. So that's why usually the priest would read the Synaxarium. And glory be to God forever. Amen. We'll stop here for today. And we'll continue, God willing, next week from this point and continue with the liturgy of the readings. So let us start the game here. Are there any quick questions? Okay, let me copy this into the chat here. So you can click on the link to play the game with us.